Chicago, Illinois, picking up 2 games out of the 3-game set, and interesting storylines everywhere from Miguel Gonzalez on Friday night to how Dylan Bundy has looked, and of course all over baseball, word on Manny Machado from Sunday, and on the backside of A-Rod and Teixeira and Ichiro's 3,000th hit, we welcome in our Orioles and baseball historian and longtime friend here, 2 decades covering the Orioles and Major League Baseball for us at WNST. He is Alan McCallum. And, you know, Alan, when I call you an Oriole historian now, like that's how I bill you out on Facebook. And I think after a couple of decades, you start to build a real appreciation for sort of these things. I mean, I remember Teixeira playing baseball over Mount St. Joe, and Timmy Watts, who was my intern that summer back 97, 98, 99, said, hey, you got to come see this kid, Teixeira, Texiera, you got, you know, and now, like, it's over. It really is amazing when you see the bookends of this thing, how old we're all getting, Alan.
I got to tell you, I was thinking about that when I was reading that A-Rod is going to play the last game on Friday, that I started with you in August of 95, right before Cal broke the streak. And the next year, A-Rod basically had his coming out party as Rookie of the Year in 96, and that was the first full year I was with you. And he's saying that he started when he was 18, and he's retiring now, and there's a lot of mileage between then and now.
How much money has he made, by the way? I just want you. I mean, I know you're going to get within $25 million, but put a number on it right now. What was his career earnings, Mark Teixeira?
Well, he signed a 10-year, $250 million contract many moons ago. He's not going to play the last year of that, and he had probably made, I don't know, probably something like $150 million before that. I'm going to say ballpark $450 million.
No, he's made $189,900,000.
He signed a 10-year, $250 million contract.
He didn't go all the way through it though. Yeah.
All right.
I'm giving it to you straight from, you know, Baseball Reference, but, you know, you start to come up with these numbers, and it really starts to get crazy, right? I mean, and I look at him, and I feel like it was a pretty unfulfilled career in the Hall of Fame sense. I mean, Hall of really good, made a lot of money, did his thing, played for the Yankees, lived his dream, got dealt around a little bit, you know, after the first 5 years in Texas. But, you know, by and large, great career, but not a Hall of Fame career.
Well, I mean, there are a couple of things in that. First off, you're talking about money, and just consider what Mike Stanton just signed for, and in today's money line. And Mike Stanton, quite frankly, couldn't hold Alex Rodriguez's jock from when he was a young player. I mean, Alex Rodriguez was on pace to be the greatest player in the history of baseball, putting up outfielder numbers at shortstop. Numbers that Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth and the like, and quite frankly, did that. But if his career hadn't been tarnished the way it has over and over and over again, he probably would go down in history as that
well, Bonds too, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, Bonds is that other guy, and I mean, we have a really fractured conversation whenever we talk about the greatest players of our generation, right? It was very clear to me before we were around. There was Aaron, Mays, and Mantle, right? I mean, and you could make your argument for whomever you wanted, and your whole McCoveys and your Brookses and all those guys. This generation, I don't even know where to begin. If my grandson, God forbid, ever asked me, hey, tell me about the generation that you covered, where you were in the locker rooms with the Androstine Dione and Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa. You saw those guys play, didn't you? And I don't even know what I would point to beyond Ripken and Gwynn. And I guess Ichiro's a guy that, to talk about guys that were my guys, right? Ken Griffey Jr. was also a guy that I always liked. I enjoyed talking to. I know he got his love last week. But there are very few people that went through that era that came out on the other end unstained, whether they're worthy of it or not. I don't know if Cal Ripken took steroids or not, but
right.
the world thinks he didn't. I don't know whether Ken Griffey Jr. hit the juice or not, but history dictates that he didn't. So, therefore, I guess he didn't, right?
I mean, I think you would talk to the next generation of kids about, in the truthful way, that we saw some of the greatest things we've ever seen. I wouldn't add Mark McGwire into that discussion because aside from hitting home runs, I personally don't think he was that great a player. But
yeah, you've always been very anti-McGuire, and as it's been 18 years since he cheated, so you've had 18 years to get your digs in, and I don't disagree with you, dude. I mean, I put all of them in a category. I mean, one of them is running the Baltimore Orioles right now that I look at and say, 20 years later, he hasn't admitted any guilt, and he's flexing his muscles and saying, I hit 51, and and it's sitting there, and every time Chris Davis hits one, or Trumbo has the kind of, we're talking about it, and and putting it into that kind of context, you have to look at it and kind of smile and laugh the way Jim Palmer does. And if Jim Palmer's laughing at it, why the hell shouldn't I? Right?
I mean, sure. I mean, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens. I mean, there's certainly players of the great ilk that tarnish their careers. Alex Rodriguez is probably the most stained of them all. So there's certainly people to talk about. But you mentioned, Cal Ripken, Tony Gwynn, Ken Griffey Jr., Derek Jeter, Ichiro, Pedro Martinez, Randy Johnson. There are a ton of names of players who were the greatest of the great that we lived through when in our 20s and 30s and into the early 40s in some cases, where we saw some of the greatest players that the game has ever seen who have not been tarnished. Or certainly were not caught, as you said. No one will ever know. One of my favorite players at the time was Ken Caminetti. I thought he was a great player. I loved the way he played third base. I loved his skills, and
he was always cool to me.
Yeah,
I liked him. I mean, I was around the Padres. I mean, what I remember about that. I got to laugh out loud because we have to add some levity to the show here at some point. And we're going to get to Machado and Bundy and all that stuff. Alan McCallum joined us here. When I was out in San Diego, the Macarena. Do you remember the Macarena?
Absolutely.
Do you remember the Ken Caminetti Macarena song?
Wow.
Oh, no. They changed the words to Ken Caminetti. It was hilarious. And in San Diego, one night I was in, Dick's Last Resort or something, and I was a younger man then, of course. And it was 1998, and I just remember that. So, I know Ken Caminetti had an incredible tragedy. So, but I remember that song as being the number one song in San Diego. I heard it on the radio, and
everybody ever played with him said he's just a great dude and someone that you cared about. And he admitted his failings and the things that happened, and it, not only did it cost him the respect of his career, it cost him his life. So I mean, there certainly have been bigger fish to fry in some respects for some of the players, but there's certainly.
I mean, Sammy Sosa changed colors. Look at what it did to him.
Anyway, but we just saw Ken Griffey Jr. go into the Hall of Fame on one of the greatest careers that the game has ever seen, and marred by injury was the only thing you can say that tarnished it in the latter half. But there's certainly players that we can look back on and say, Craig Biggio. Nobody talks about Craig Biggio. You look at the numbers this guy put up. All he did was hit doubles, and he played second base, center field. He was a catcher. He came up as a catcher. I mean, all he did was play.
If he was a Yankee, he would have been Joe Morgan, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And there are people to celebrate from the era that we're coming through that you'll be able to tell your grandkids about. But there certainly had its share of scandal, and it's not the first era in baseball or in sports, from the Black Sox to the beginning of the Union in the 60s and the early 70s to certainly Jackie Robinson and the integration of the game. I mean, it's not the first. In some ways, it's probably the ugliest, the least needed to have happened. But it's certainly not alone in scandal. Quite frankly, I mean, I know as a baseball fan and historian, thank you, Ness, that you look at the kinds of things that Ken Burns put together and the stories the books that have been written, and baseball, maybe not so much in the 21st century, but certainly the story of baseball in the 20th century is in many ways the story of the country in that time. So it's not unusual how these things have happened and how it changes. And quite frankly, I mean, in this era, it's about money and technology. It's sort of damaging the game or damaging the history of the game, whether it's instant replay or drugs and infusing the game with things that we've never seen. maybe in the 21st century it is just as much a story of America, because we're all sort of trying to figure out where our place in this world is anyway.
Including the shift.
Absolutely. So, I mean, to sabermetrics and data and how all of that has affected the world in general, certainly baseball. So, I mean, it is a sport that marks the time. And I don't think you want to lie to kids or pretend like those things didn't happen, but you certainly try to put them in perspective and give your thoughts on it. Some people think steroids were not a big deal. I personally think that in years to come, they'll be seen differently. But if you're one of the greatest, Barry Bonds would have been a Hall of Famer without ever taking a drug. He was one of the greatest baseball players we'd ever seen.
Same thing with Clemens. I mean, Clemens didn't need to have that second act, right? I mean, it's nice that he had it for him. He made a hell of a lot of money, but, he's never going to go to the Hall of Very Good, that's for sure.
The story in Boston was that he had lost what he was, and that storyline angered him. It certainly seems to be the way it played, and he went to do something about it to regain his glory.
Sort of Lou Ferrigno.
If you're
Bruce Banner.
I've said this to you before. I'll say it again. If you're the last guy on the roster and you're trying to maintain your job, I see that in a much more reasonable way.
Yeah, when they found the needles in Manny Alexander's glove compartment in Boston, I sort of understood it,
as opposed to the guy who's had a magnificent career and has made tons of money, and at this point it's just about adding that extra glory because you didn't want someone else to come along. And that's the natural progression. That's how things work. And
no, because you want to make $20 million a year.
And that's a problem. And at that
and
point,
pad your stats.
I personally believe that those people should not be in the Hall of Fame because you sacrifice greatness for infamy. You sacrifice being looked upon as one of the all-time greats for money and temporary notoriety, and there should be consequences to that. And the only one that you can put on them at that point is to keep them out of the Hall of Fame, and that's my personal opinion about it.
All right, so look, we'll get to Machado and Bundy. I want to do that, but the last thing, when they put Ichiro in 6-8 years, man, he might play 3 more years. When they put him in, I don't think there will be enough flights from Japan to New York City or enough tours going up to Cooperstown. I have a feeling, half of Tokyo will be in Cooperstown that week. I mean, literally, the Ichiro thing has defined Asian baseball for this country and this generation. And from the very minute he walked on the turf here, from the minute I saw him sport those sunglasses in Seattle, that bomber jacket that night, and said, that dude's like Fonzie, man. You know what I mean? Like, I've always loved me some Ichiro. So I am rejoicing in his 3,000th hit. And, he might be the last player I ever loved. Literally, I don't have a player right now. I don't have like a guy that my Sixto Lescano. And maybe I've just outgrown it. But, I did go to 30 ballparks in 30 days last year. I sort of follow Big Papi in some fun way because he was so kind to me and didn't have to be. And for that, what would make you cheer for someone other than their personal kindness toward you when they didn't have to be? So, I sort of follow him a little bit. But, my buddies are out of the game. My Schillings and Messinas and all those guys. Obviously, Tony Gwynn has left us, if I'm talking about my favorite. By the way, I found my Tony Gwynn bat. I'm going to retrieve it. I'm going to show it on the air. I have it over in the corner, but I have it in the office now. I'm going to display it somewhere.
It was at the studio for a while, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's in there. He gave it to me in Houston. The last tour, the last summer, I was down there doing a piece with him that you guys have heard probably. I've run it here about his retirement and all that good stuff. And he gave me this bat. He said, I'm giving bats to people that I like because I'm not using them anymore.
That's amazing.
Look, he's like, I got a couple of 100 bats, and I'm giving them away. Do you want one? And I'm like,
yes.
I'll take. Yeah, sure, Tony. I'll take a bat. So my favorite players are gone, but Ichiro might be my last bromance, my last man crush. You know what I mean? Like literally, right?
We had seen Japanese pitchers begin to enter the game a few years before Hideo Nomo and the like, but Ichiro was the first hitter. And you remember all the discussion of for all his greatness that he had in Japan, can he do it in America? And from the moment he got here, he was a superstar. I remember going to Seattle the first time 10 years ago, and there were buildings with just skyscraper-sized murals of Ichiro on them. He was sort of after Ken Griffey, and he was their next big star. And Ness, if someone wanted to make the argument that Ichiro was the greatest baseball player ever, I'm not saying I would agree with it, but I'd listen to that argument. If you, in terms of being a hitter, tell me someone who's better. Tell me someone who is clearly a better hitter. I would like to hear that. He's in an elite class with a very small number of people historically as a hitter. And we talked about this about
and then you add the fielding and the smarts, and the problem is not winning, right? I mean,
right.
The problem is winning 116 games, whatever ungodly number they won in 2009, or two, and not winning, right? It was a 4. What year was it?
Right. Then bowing
was it
out
1? What year?
It
was 1, wasn't it?
That was. I think
it was the year he was the MVP, right?
I want to say 2002. I could be wrong.
I'm going to look it up.
But I mean, yeah, exactly.
Thank God for the internet. I remember I needed books to do this 20 years ago.
A spectacular outfielder, one of the greatest arms of the game we will ever see, a spectacular base runner. He did everything you could ask except pitch, basically, his teams into the postseason and go far. And he was spectacular, and he carried the mantle of superstar quietly.
By the way, it was 1. It was 2001. That was his rookie year here. Obviously, 116 wins, and they lost 4 games. I mean, they lost badly in the ALCS to a very, very good Yankee team that was on its run, right? So,
he was a fantastic ball player. Still is. I mean, you look what he's doing in limited duty right now, and he's putting up numbers that are Ichiro-like, and just not playing every day. So. I have great respect for him, and I think you look at the numbers that he put up as a hitter in Japan. I said it to you 2 months ago. He'll never get that recognition in this country, but he's past Pete Rose for a career as a hitter, and I think that he is worthy of that discussion in terms of the kinds of numbers that he's put up.
All right, Alan, our Orioles historian and baseball insider put the Manny Machado show on Sunday. 3 bombs, and clearly with at least 2 more at-bats coming to him through the game. I mean, it was an interesting Sunday, but made even more interesting by the continuing emergence of Dylan Bundy, who I don't want to call him an ace, but I'm going to give him an A. Not a C and an E yet, but I'm going to give him an A. If we're playing the horse game, so far so good. And there's been a lot of history of guys having 5 good starts. Luke and I have discussed everyone from Alan Ramirez and Rocky Coppinger, and right on through Eric Bell. I mean, going through recent memory as well with Josh. What was his name? Right?
Mike Wright.
Mike Wright, there you go.
His first 3 starts were spectacular, but Sunday was a huge day for the Orioles. They certainly needed to break out. Chris Davis hitting a home run was something we hadn't seen in a while. They were starting to slide the missing man formation for him. Manny Machado had a huge first 3 innings. There's no doubt about that. And he was certainly due. July, historically, is his worst month, and it would be nice if he could break out, because if you look at the Orioles 3, 4, 5 and the numbers they put up over the last 5 weeks or so, it's pretty pathetic, quite frankly, the way they've struggled. It's frankly pretty strong that they've won as many games as they have, given the numbers that Machado and Davis and Trumbo largely have not put up in the last 5 to 6 weeks. But Machado breaks out through the first 3 innings. It was a great performance. But as you said, I think the most important thing about Sunday was Dylan Bundy. Dylan Bundy's changeup is the truth. His fastball is a good major league fastball, but I think the difference is the changeup. I have always been of the belief that if I had, obviously the fastball is the most important pitch, but I think the second best pitch to throw in Major League Baseball is a quality changeup, because it throws guys off. I think that
timing's everything at that level,
absolutely.
Right? I mean, it just is, and disguise is the name of the game.
Exactly, and his arm action coming out of throwing the changeup is really hard to pick up. So he's been spectacular. I think one of the things that's very different about the performances that you're talking about is that a lot of the league has seen Bundy for a while now in middle relief. Now, there's no doubt that if you want to sort of hide someone from the league, putting them in middle relief is probably the best way to do it, because you don't really have to think about those guys. You get ready for the starters, you get ready for the late inning relievers, but the middle guys can usually give you 2 to 3 innings and get through a lineup once, but not necessarily a second time around. So that's often a good way to disguise. But I think Dylan Bundy, but they had seen him. And so I would say that the biggest difference in these first few starts is that he was not a completely unknown commodity like a Mike Wright or some of the other guys. This was not his first time coming up in the league, didn't know anything about him. And also it looks like he's gotten stronger. He's gotten more confidence. Maybe the arm strength that they were looking for is making its way.
Well, I mean, we doubted that he could get to this level after his first start, which was 60 pitches, and he looked winded. You know, at 50, 55, that was kind of the stretch for him. He's looking at 100 now, like we can't wait to see him pitch in San Francisco Friday, right?
Right, and look, the efficiency with which he's throwing has been really impressive. Certainly not something that we're used to seeing from the Orioles. From a lack of walks to, and this is the thing about the Orioles, even over the last few years when they've had, you know, the Chens, the Gonzaleses, and Tillman, the ability to miss bats has been something that this team has missed. Tillman gives up as many foul balls as any good pitcher I've ever seen, as did Chen, as did Gonzalez. And one of the things that's kept Dylan Bundy being efficient, staying around the strike zone, but also he's missing bats. So that is a really good thing to have. His stuff is certainly good enough. Again, the league's going to adjust. They will get better. They will have to prepare for him. So it'll get harder. But I think that this is a little more genuine, a little more realistic than some of the other starters that you've talked about, not just because of his pedigree, but just the quality of the stuff that he's throwing up there, and the fact that the league had seen him a little bit. So I'm more positive about a start like this than I would have been about pretty much any of the other guys you mentioned there a few minutes ago.
By the way, the Machado link to the Yankees, now that the Yankees have parted ways with A-Rod and Teixeira, and it was almost like a Godfather weekend, right? I mean, Teixeira to start the weekend, A-Rod, you're getting whacked, right? I mean, it really is. It's like, you know, they're taking care of family business now, you know? And part of this is the crystal ball of all of the young players that they got in the deals 2 weeks ago, with the confluence of we're going to have $75, $100 million to throw around 3 years from now. And look, man, I'll give the Orioles all the credit in the world. I'll even give the old man credit for at least getting Buck to sign on, figuring out Duquette, writing a check for Davis amongst some other guys, while pocketing a lot of money, lying to a lot of people, hurting a lot of people, suing a lot of people. I'll add that in, but I will say this. You know, this era for the Orioles, all respect to them, a lot of it really has come because of this dip from the Yankees, this dip from the Red Sox, a lot of their money blowing up, players not working out, A-Rod going into the tank, Teixeira having injuries and age, CC Sabathia, money not well spent by the Red Sox, whether it's Sandoval or Ramirez. You know, take anywhere you want. Even the Yankees taking on problems like Jacoby Ellsbury and giving bad money to somebody else's player. All of that aside, you know, if the Yankees ever start spending wisely, and the one thing the Yankees have not done, and since Messina, which was, you know, a decade and a half ago, dude, they haven't come and pillaged, you know, the Orioles. You know, Brian Roberts notwithstanding. But, you know, that was the name of the game for a couple of decades. And look, the Orioles played that game, as did the Blue Jays for a couple of years in the mid-'90s when, you know, the franchises were deodorized and 3.6 million people were coming, where, you know, who was going to fight over Jimmy Key and Roberto Alomar and David Wells, who were all shared by the Orioles and the Blue Jays. You know, this modern era has really been about money, and now the Yankees reloading, and they're coming to get your Manny Machado, whoever your Manny Machado is, yeah, Philly and they, Bryce Harper, Trout, whatever it is. You know, some thoughts on that after a 3-home run game when even Buck said Machado was glued to the A-Rod press conference and, you know, probably says maybe one day I'll be up there. I don't know how he thinks. I don't know how he could not think that and could not envision himself anywhere he wants to be because he's going to be able to write that ticket because he gets 3 home runs in a game. And I don't know what the Orioles could possibly do to keep him away from free agency at this point, and I don't know what they'd be willing to do, but It is a valid question at this point.
At the time that the Yankees in the long-term contracts, the extremely expensive long-term contracts that they gave out were getting, all those players were getting old, and they'd had far less roster and payroll flexibility. And at a time when the Red Sox, who had been on a wild run of success, some of their players got old, and some of their players seemed to lose a little bit of the fire, the chicken story and all that. The Orioles had, through largely Andy McPhail, had brought in young players who were hungry. The dynamic of the team was changing, and they had made some savvy moves. Duquette came in in 2012 and brought some of the pitching to make a difference. But the Orioles certainly, at the point when the two long-term powerhouses in the American League East were falling back, the Orioles took a step forward. The Rays did as well, but their window did not last as long. The Blue Jays had been floundering for a good long time, and it's only been in the last couple of years they started to figure that out. So the Yankees, completely hamstrung by these contracts for years, they've done some major business in the last 2.5 weeks. Andrew Miller is gone. Aroldis Chapman is gone. Carlos Beltran is gone. Mark Teixeira leaves at the end of the year, and A-Rod leaves on Friday. So, I mean, you're talking about, 5, 6 major contracts that they've been able to either move or they know what's going to happen to them when it's all said and done at the end of this season. That opens up a significant amount of roster flexibility and payroll flexibility for them. The next year, they're probably going to throw away, waiting for some of these guys to mature that they've brought in. We all know some of them won't succeed, but I'm sure they're counting on enough to make it worth their while. And then you're absolutely right. Bryce Harper, Manny Machado.
They weren't the best players. They're the Yankees, for crying out loud, right? I mean, they've always bought the best players. I mean, in the last few years, whether it was a mistake like Joe Mauer, right, or in the Orioles' case, Nick Markakis or Adam Jones or anyone else who would have been a target, Brian Roberts. I mean, you go through any list of names anywhere; those are just our guys. Not wrapping those guys up is, at this point, for any organization, an invitation for the Yankees to come in 18 and 19 because they're going to have the wherewithal to do that. So it really is up to these teams whether they're going to sign their Correas and their Bryants and their Strasburgs and their Trouts and just go on down the list, right?
This game, more than any time that I personally can remember in the last 25, 30 years, belongs to the young stars.
I mean, I saw that Colorado team come through here. What the hell was that? Those guys can play.
The Arenado and Story, I mean, there are some extremely good young players in the game right now, and a lot of them at ages 23, 24, 25, looking to be free agents for the first time. I mean, those are the era before them. Guys were free agents at 28, 29, and 30. And from 30 to 35, you're going to watch those numbers start to decline. Well, a significant number of the guys that are coming up in the not this year, not next year, but the year after and the years to come, they're going to be 24 and 25 and 26 and 27, which gives them another 6 to 7 year window.
Hey, man, these teams started a lot of guys' clocks, and, there was a period of time when, starting Matt Wieder's clock and starting Nick Markakis' clock was a massive, massive hurdle when Mike Flanagan and Jim Beattie and those types are running this organization, and they weren't the only ones. That went on in every organization.
Absolutely, and so this is a huge time. I think the bottom line is, you were saying, is this. If you want your young star to stay with you, you better sign him before they get to free agency because the Yankees will be calling. Now, there's a piece in this. I mean, the money is so good right now. Not everybody wants to play in New York. There's certainly the guys that are going to run for that because it is New York, it's the biggest stage, and they want the biggest money. But the money is so good. There are some players out there now that will say, I'm comfortable where I am. This works for me. I'm going to stay. You better hope you have that guy. I don't know what Manny Machado is. There was huge speculation for the last couple of years with Steven Strasburg, for example, that Sonny in '75, and that San Diego was calling his name, and he signed out of the blue with Washington and had the reasons that, hey, they took care of me, and I'm comfortable here. And quite frankly, with Scherzer and the rest of the rotation, he doesn't have to be the guy.
I think I can win here, too.
Right. So, I mean, those pieces, with the money being as good as it is anywhere, it changes the dynamic for the Yankees. Don't get me wrong. The Yankees those pinstripes are like stars twinkling in the night for a lot of guys, and they'll always be sort of the sexiest pick, but it's not for everybody. I don't know what Manny Machado wants. I know I'm sure he wants to get paid, and the Orioles are not the first place to look to for that to happen. But I think everybody at this point has been put on notice by the New York Yankees.
I'm writing that down, by the way. He wants to get paid, and the Orioles are traditionally not the first place to make that happen. Okay. I paraphrase.
One of the things about signing Chris Davis is that, that kind of money for, as I said to you in December, I'll say it to him again, he's never been the guy. He's the guy that will carry you for 10 days at a stretch, but he's never been the guy in the middle of the lineup to really stir the drink through a course of a season. That's not the kind of player he is. Manny Machado is developing into that guy. He certainly has some more work to do, but he is the best player on the team. So for the Orioles to give that kind of money to Chris Davis sets them up to give Manny Machado a significant payday if they want to keep him. The bottom line is that every team has been put on notice by the Yankees that if you want to keep your player, your big-time young player, you better sign him now because we're coming after him soon. And that's something that
everybody's on watch, right?
Absolutely. Everybody's
Sharks hungry. Look out. Stay out of the way. Find a rock to hide behind it, but there is none. So, hey, man, out to the West Coast, the whole week out there. I know you spent some time out in the Bay Area, and you know how much I love it. If times were different and the week were different and the timing were different and my wife were feeling better and I was feeling my oats, I would go out. And I hadn't spent 10 days out there already this year, right?
Right.
I would go out there and live for a week and run around with Julio and drink too much tequila and watch the Orioles play in Oakland all week and then out in San Francisco. But, big week and a lot to prove on the road for this team right now. And let's be honest. I mean, the Wolf is knocking at the door. Toronto's sitting there. The Red Sox are sitting right behind them. And, oh, by the way, a bunch of races have gotten close, right? Detroit's up on Cleveland now. The Dodgers are somehow in it with the Giants, which makes the weekend's games even more important. We're going to be up late all week, right?
Absolutely. Look, these are the dog days of the season. Teams get out to big runs, and in July and August, it's hot. People are tired. You're battling injuries. You're trying to keep everybody healthy, and the teams that get hot, that figure some things out, that make some smart deals, all of a sudden they start creeping up. This is the way the baseball season often works. So whether you're the Cleveland Indians or the Baltimore Orioles or the Chicago Cubs, quite frankly, I mean they've gotten it right here now, but they were for about 5 to 6 weeks after getting off to an almost historic start, had slowed down here a little bit. There are a lot of teams that are on notice right now as their competition is chasing them.
Hey, well, the Houston Astros are starting to fade again too, right?
There are a lot of clubs, and there's no question. And the Rangers, loading up the way they did, certainly have put the pressure on the Astros to stay with it, and the Astros didn't do anywhere near quite as much. So trade Scott Feldman to the Toronto Blue Jays, which we may end up having to say thank you very much to them for doing so because he struggled so far out of their pen. But this is a time on paper where you look at the Orioles and what the teams they're facing right now and saying they should be making some hay. They take 2 out of 3 from Chicago. But this is often the reverse lock for the Orioles. Going out on the road against teams that they should beat, and they often find ways to lose these games. So,
and it usually happens really late at night and pisses you off.
Right. It's not 10-0 in the first inning where you can sort of turn your attention to something else, but a blown lead in the 7th or 8th inning or an extra inning game.
Yeah, 1:12 a.m. Yeah, it's not fun.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Hey, look, man, decaf is not on the menu this week, right? Let's stay up late. I know you have no problem doing that in general, and we'll be following along. It's going to be a good week of baseball out on the West Coast. We got football starting up and certainly pennant races everywhere and plenty to discuss. Alan, always great having you on, man. Rest up this week, all right?
All right, Nestor, talk to you soon.
You got it. He is our Oriole historian and longtime Major League Baseball coverer. He is Alan McCallum. You can reach him, Alan, at WNST.net. He's also out on Facebook and with his rock and roll band, E.M. Spencer, as well. You can find me, Nasty, at WNST.net. Don't forget, Tuesday night, we do have Coach Billick at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. That's Tuesday the 9th. Crab cakes, beer, fun, football conversation. Great to be back up in Carroll County on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation and swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry and our friends at There Goes My Hero. We'll see at 7 o'clock on Tuesday with Coach Billick at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. I'll be the guy eating the fried crab cakes because I like those better. The Buy a Toyota Audio Vault there 24 hours a day for you from anywhere in the world. Download onto your mobile device the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear anywhere in the world you are. Our morning newspaper reaches you at 7 a.m. to your email inbox every morning. It is free of charge and powered up by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. And last but never ever least, even though the Orioles are out on the West Coast, any breaking news, things that happen, roster moves, Raven issues this week, and injury reports, they all come to you on the WNST text service. It's free, it's easy, one click, and it's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday getting you ready for the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton, and probably not Joe Flacco, but who knows? That's why we cover practice. Luke will be out on the backfields of Owings Mills. I will be here on the radio. You can always reach me, Nasty, at WNST.net, Facebook, Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and the WNSTV YouTube channel. I'm a very available individual. My name's Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.